very hip.
Boy, I don't know if he lost a bet or what is happening here, if this is by choice, but either way, a man of style and fashion. He is playing Mud, which is a deck that I'm not sure if he's ever played before. Normally, we've seen Rill play Storm. We've seen him play, again, Grixis Delver, but he's going with the Artifact approach here, while Brandon Dye is just playing a more traditional deck in Rug Delver. You've got the Mud deck listed in front of you. I know there's some Chalices hanging out there that are obviously very good against Rug Delver. What else do you see?
Well, I mean, one of the things he has that's really good, if it can live, Goblin Welder does a number on all of the counter magic that is in Brandon Dye's list. Unfortunately, there's a lot of burn as well, so Chalice for 1 on turn 1. One of the best openers you can possibly do. Look at Brandon Dye's face.
Yeah.
He's like, well, I got Goyf.
Well, Brandon's going to be on the... Well, he obviously doesn't have Forcible in his hand, or he didn't then. City Trader's going to come out of play now. You see, Rill is going to cast a Metalworker, or excuse me, a Lodestone Golem, Cavernous Souls naming Golem. So this is getting ugly very fast.
Well, he's going to be at 10 life before he can deal with that Golem.
Here's the thing. Tarmogoyf isn't going to grow, and obviously Dye has looks like a 1-lander, because that's what Rug Delver does, is they ponder and brainstorm to find their lands, which he can't do because of Chalice of the Void. So Delver of Secrets is going to be discarded, and I think this game is going to be over pretty quickly here, Adrian.
Oh, yeah.
So if you're Brandon, you can try to glean some information, but let me ask you this question here, because we have a game that's, for all intents and purposes, pretty much done for here.
Yep.
Do you concede before discarding there?
Yes.
Just give away no information?
Yes.
Because now, Rill knows that keeping a hand that has Chalice on 1 that he can play on, Chalice for 1 that he can play on turn 1, it's just going to be like an auto keep. Whereas, maybe Brandon just concedes the game and says, I'm beat. I don't want to give away any relevant information, after Rill plays that Lodestone Golem and just picks it up.
I mean, let's pretend that you're Eric Rill and he concedes after laying, I don't know which fetch land he laid, but I might... Scalding Tarn.
Mm-hmm.
So let's pretend that Eric Rill sees that Scalding Tarn. I might bring in Witchbane Orb. Maybe I'm playing against Storm.
Sure.
Maybe that Chalice for 1 was enough and I just beat Storm, Like, that little bit of information gives enough for me to know that Ensnaring Bridge can have some utility.
Yeah, I mean, you can certainly put your opponent on some on like a range of decks with when they just play a Scalding Tarn and they concede the game. But now it's just like a Delver was discarded, so now it's a very small range of decks, which is like Rug Delver or the Grixis Delver deck that Rill actually won with in Cincinnati, and now he can actually sideboard appropriately where there's no really hidden information.
Yeah, I mean, I look at it, and some people don't like Ensnaring Bridges for anything other than Emrakuls and such, but I think Eric's hand can empty out fast enough that it's going to be good against Goyfs and against Delvers.
Yeah, I mean, you've got Delvers that are going to flip into Insectile Aberration. Those will be 3/2s. Nimble Mongoose are going to turn into 3/3s because of Threshold. Goyf is oftentimes going to be a 3/4 or a 4/5 in Legacy, so Bridge can just shut those things down quite often, actually. I'm kind of with you there. As we take a look at the sideboard here, on Dye's side, he's going to be down a game here, so he'll be on the play. Software Elemental, Life in the Loam, 3 Submerge, 2 Flusterstorm, 1 Pyroblast, 1 Red Elemental Blast, 3 Tormod's Crypts, 2 copies of Rough and Tumble, and the obvious one in 1 copy of Ancient Grudge. You do find Ancient Grudge oftentimes in the sideboard of Rug Delver decks, but a lot of the time it's just a one-off.
In Eric Rill's deck, I also don't mind 1 Spellskite. His board for the full of it is 1 Summoning Trap, 1 Spellskite, 1 Staff of Nin, 1 Witchbane Orb, 1 Lodestone Golem, 1 Blood Moon, 4 Ensnaring Bridge, 1 Spine of Ishsa, 1 Crucible of Worlds, and 3 Trinisphere. Spellskite can protect a valuable artifact of some kind, can protect a Goblin Welder.
Yeah, I kind of like that as an option. It
can block a Goose.
Yeah, that's true too. There's a chance it can get in front of a Tarmogoyf as well. It can only be a 3/4. I actually kind of like that. Rill's deck is interesting again because he does have Chalice of the Void, which is obviously fantastic if it does resolve against Rug Delver. He also has some copies of Blood Moon hanging out here too. Looks pretty similar to the deck list that Ali Antrazi was advocating a couple weeks back. Maybe some cosmetic changes here and there, but overall, I mean, you've got a deck that has 8 Soul Ring lands and Ancient Tomb and City of Traders and is trying to play unfair magic by ramping out some big things quickly and making it so that the opponent can't do anything, as we saw in game 1.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that is awesome about a Chalice deck, any Chalice deck in any format where it's legal, just basically tries to make your opponent's spells useless. And it doesn't just run Chalice, obviously. You mentioned the Blood Moons. And then in the sideboard, there's also Trinispheres. So there's a lot of ways in which it can make the opponent's deck useless. And what I find very interesting, is that when I was looking at the way Death and Taxes plays, Death and Taxes basically has the same game plan. It just uses different cards to do it. Make your cards useless. I've got this Mother of Runes. Okay, I've got this Thalia. Okay, how about, you don't get to do anything because I've got another protection creature in the form of a Crusader.
Now, let's make no mistake about it. Rill being on the play there was certainly advantageous for him for numerous reasons in Legacy, but most importantly is that he's able to play a Chalice on turn 1 for 1 and present the ultimate question over to Dai of, do you have Force of Will or not? If you don't, you're dead. It makes it so that he can't cast Daze, he can't play Spell Pierce, or any other of those cards that would be able to counter a Chalice on one. Now that Dai's going to be on the play, he can start by pondering, having up Daze, Brainstorm, look for a Force of Will in response. Do those things instead of it just being Force of Will or bust in the matchup. So being on the play versus the draw in this matchup, especially on the Rug Delver side, there's a world of difference there.
That was an incredibly quick game. I mean, these players have easily spent more time mulliganing than they actually finished playing that last game.
Hey, that's why Legacy is awesome. Some people don't like that about Legacy, that the game goes so fast and the game can end that way, but I like formats in which you have to make very, very crucial decisions in the beginning turns of the game. It makes it so that if you do make that misstep, you get punished for it.
Oh, absolutely.
I love that about Legacy.
Yeah, me too. I mean, I still always think about SCG Columbus last year at Origins, where I wastelanded an opponent who looked like they were mana stalled. And that was a mistake, because they were Rug Delver, and they don't need much mana.
Yeah.
And I was a deck that was a control deck. I was bug control. I needed to have my mana. And right there, that's the exact thing that this format is all about. Knowing your place in the matchup and doing the right things. The person that is more prepared for a matchup, and I mean not just in their head, but also with the cards in their deck, they're the one that's going to win almost all the time.
So we are going to be underway here now. This is actually a really good card that I love in this deck. That is the Gitaxian Probe, a card that is being added to Rug Delver decks everywhere. Dai has 3 copies in his hand. You take a look at the hand there of Wasteland, Great Furnace. There's a Goblin Welder. There's 2 copies of Metalworker, a Blightsteel Colossus, and a Chalice of the Void. So Rill does not have the ability right now to play a Chalice on turn number 1. But getting the information for Dai is obviously the most important thing. It cantripping, also a big deal, but knowing what he has to worry about and when he needs to worry about it. That's very, very powerful stuff for the Rug Delver deck. So now Dai has the information, he can craft his game plan, knows he needs to ponder and brainstorm for, and, figure out how he wants to navigate these turns by starting with sacrificing a Scalding Tarn.
Now, one of the things that is fun in Eric Rill's hand, that Blightsteel Colossus, kind of an offensive card to some, but a one-hit kill, generally speaking.
Yeah.
Unless you can do a lot of work, it's a one-hit kill, and in Eric Rill's deck is the Lightning Greaves Blightsteel Colossus combo. So with Kuldotha Forgemaster, it can suddenly be Forgemaster finds a Greaves, finds a Colossus, it's on, you're dead.
Turn 1 Nimble Mongoose there from Dai, so he wants to get the pressure on Rill to start. We'll see if Dai does have a Force of Will or a Daze in his hand in case Rill did top deck one of those double lands to play Chalice on turn 1. You see Rill's going to take his time here. Is he going to go about Wastelanding, or does he just want to play a Welder on 1? There's your Great Furnace. There is your Goblin Welder. Did you see Nimble Mongoose on the screen?
Oh, wow. It lives.
Yeah, so we're going to go back to Dai's turn. And it's funny because, if you're kind of new to Legacy or new-ish to Magic, you see a Goblin Welder, and you see exchange target artifact, and a player controls for target artifact in that player's graveyard. How good is that card really, as Rill does have a Cavern of Souls from his draw step last turn? That's the only thing that has changed. Goblin Welder, during its heyday, was a completely insane card.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the best one-drops that's ever been printed.
And, this was before I was playing competitive Magic, right before I started jumping into these waters. See, that Misty Rainforest is going to get sacrificed probably for a Volcanic Island here, and he will get the blue-red source before presenting his deck over to Rill. Just the Welder decks back in the days of those Pro Tours with Academy and stuff like that,
Yep.
that was a Magic's heyday. Kind of a scary time to be playing Magic, because the cards were so good, the interactions were so powerful. It's kind of a shame not to see Welder be better in Legacy.
I mean, I still think it's really, really good. It's just that the deck that it's supporting, it's leaning so heavily on artifacts that the particular hate cards can do a real number on it.
I mean, back in the day, what was the best Welder deck from like many moons ago?
Well, I mean, it depends on what time you're talking about. We see the Chalice, by the way, coming off of a City of Traders that was newly drawn
Force of Will going to take care of it, removing a Stifle there for die. So the Tarmogoyf will get a little bit bigger. We'll get the Tarmogoyf die out there for you guys just so you can see how large that Tarmogoyf is. But back on the welder discussion.
Yeah. Well, one of the ones that was pretty good was the 710 split deck. This was actually a deck in Extended, and this was a welder deck that would be able to put down Sundering Titan and other problematic cards really, really quickly and powerfully. But then if you go to the Pro Tour itself, the Pro Tour had basically 2 decks that were running welder as a means to get some major advantage out of it. But mostly people think about the red-blue Tinker welder deck that won that Pro Tour in, that was my best Pro Tour. I was also playing welder, but I was playing welder in a Ponza deck, basically as a way to undo their welders.
Okay.
Like,
hey, whatever it takes. I mean, you can't exchange theirs, not just yours,
Yep.
for the artifacts. As Tarmogoyf's going to come across for 4, you see that Dai's going to be a little bit cautious with his Nimble Mongoose not getting in the red zone. I would actually want to trade with the welder, given the opportunity, just because that thing can do some very scary stuff if it is alive.
Oh, absolutely. I would be marching in there because if that welder blocked, I would be doing a dance of joy.
Yeah, I just kind of want that thing off the table. I don't know the exact composition of Rill's deck if I'm Dai, but I know that if you have Goblin Welder in your deck, you're not looking to play any fair magic. So let's get that thing off the table if we can. But he decides to hold back with the Nimble Mongoose. You see Rill and his gorgeous sweater going to think things through on this turn. If he's going to play a land, he might want to add that mana first. There we go.
And what are we going to see from Rill? We already know he has a Metalworker in his deck. There goes the land. I think we're going to... Oh, 4 mana. Wow. I think we maybe know what he named.
Yeah, Gullum will be the name there for Lodestone Gullum. Be able to push that through. So now you got a 5/3 that's in play. But here's the important thing. If you were to Lightning Bolt that, would die, Welder can actually just remove that Great Furnace, bring the Lodestone Golem back in. And that's what I mean about wanting to trade there with that Goblin Welder, because that thing is problematic. Also, if you're going to play a... okay, so he's going to play a Delver Secrets, but that's going to cost him one more mana.
Lodestone Golem, buddy.
Mm-hmm. You have to pay the price on that thing. Now, it's not vintage, so it's not completely broken, but it's still really good. And now Lodestone Golem is actually doing a nice job of holding down the fort. The problem here for Rill is that he's a big mana deck. I mean, we know he has a Blightsteel Colossus in his hand, for goodness sake. So he's this big mana deck that he needs to get to, I mean, at least 6 mana to really get things going here. He's only got 2.
Well, at least lucky for him, he's got 2 Metalworkers in his hand.
Yeah.
And Metalworker, if you're not sure, it's a 3 mana creature that taps, reveal a number of artifacts, get 2 mana for each one of those artifacts.
So he really needs a land here to be able to put that into play. He does have a land. It's that Wasteland he's been holding, and there is your Metalworker. So we're going to see if this is going to resolve, and I guess it's a lot to resolve. Daze can't happen because of Lodestone Golem. Neither can Force of Will. So Metalworker is in. There is a Daze off the top. Going to turn Delver into Insectile Aberration. Rill knows that he has to worry about Daze now, but it's really not going to be that big of a problem, I don't think. Metalworker's going to start pumping out some mana. Lodestone Golem is actually going to make it so the Daze isn't even that great. But we're going to see at least 3 damage come across in the air here for Dai, to put Rill down to 13.
What's amazing right now is Brandon's life total is just, they're tied on life.
Yeah. 2 probes, couple fetches, and a Force of Will.
Yeah.
I was wondering how he got down to 13, but no, those probes aren't free.
Yeah, I mean, they feel free until you look at the cost of your health. Now Eric Rill is in the, I think, pretty solid position. Here he goes, wasting one of the lands. Goodbye, Red Source. You see Brandon die, put some mana in his pool. I believe we're going to see Eric Rill entering the attack step in order to force Brandon to choose to do something. Now, with only 2 mana available, it has to be a 1 mana spell. He does have 4 lightning bolts.
What to do?
He says attack step, and Brandon die. What you gonna do? Nothing, apparently. Metalworker makes 4 mana. Wow, is that a Darksteel Citadel he didn't show?
Yeah. Maybe he didn't show that on purpose, though.
That's fair.
Because I was thinking the exact same thing, that you can show a Darksteel Citadel as an artifact land. Is he going to play that Darksteel Citadel? Probably represents more mana if it's in his hand. What are we working with here? Another Welder?
Another Welder.
Okay. Can't Daze that. I guess, actually, he could Daze that if he wants to.
What I kind of want to do right now, if I'm Eric Rill, is attack with that Lodestone Golem. Force something to happen. Oh, the mana is still floating. This is all pre-combat?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
I like what he's trying to do. It's kind of like an attempt to trick him. because he has 4 mana floating, 4 minus 3 for the Metalworker. Because Lodestone Golem doesn't affect artifacts, it puts him down to 1 mana floating. Then he taps the 2 mana for the Goblin Welder, so he's got 1 colorless floating in there. Trying to trick Dai into actually casting Daze does not work, but certainly a good attempt here. As there's a Wasteland, I'm going to come across for 3, put Rill down to 10.
See, what I was liking with the attack possibilities of a Lodestone Golem is the Welder can bring the Golem back on defense, get one of those artifact lands in the yard, which is actually a way that you can use to accelerate your mana by another full mana, because you can sack your Great Furnace that's in the yard then for the... you put your Darksteel Citadel to play and sack it for a Great Furnace as well, so you get another +1/+2 mana if you need it.
So here's an activation of Metalworker. Show you 3 artifacts. That's 6.
Wow.
That's 12 mana. And a Colossus, maybe? I mean, Rill knows that he has to worry about a Daze. Alright, so there's that. And here's this. I didn't think I'd be seeing this get hard cast today. I'll say that.
Force of will or bust.
Yeah, pretty much.
Look at Brandon's face like, ooh.
And don't worry, folks, we'll be bringing that Blightsteel Colossus up on the screen for you guys in just a minute, because people are kind of wondering, what is that card? I've never really seen that one before. We're looking at a 11/11 Trample Infect, indestructible, and if it would be put anywhere into the graveyard, reveal it and shuffle it in the library. So the question is if this does get countered, it goes in the graveyard. I believe there's a trigger. That does happen. There's no trigger.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's not like the Eldrazi. Okay, so there is no trigger. It just gets shuffled back in. So he couldn't go Force of Will it and then I activate my Welder with that trigger on the stack and bring it back in. You cannot do that. It's much more like Progenitus and not the Eldrazi. Eldrazi, of course, you can do something like Goryo's Vengeance, where you can't with Blightsteel Colossus for multiple reasons.
The vintage players in the audience are probably shaking their fist at Blightsteel Colossus. There are very few vintage players that I know that like the existence of that card.
Oh, too bad. Too bad, so sad. It's here. So either play with it or try to beat it. And that's what Dai is going to try to do. Is he's going to try to beat it, but that's going to be pretty tough. You see Rill kind of raise his eyebrow to draw his card. What more do you need, Eric? You have a Blightsteel Colossus in play.
Chalice for Uno.
There's
And
a
Brainstorm in response, tapping out, which means no other spells for you, Brandon Dai. It's going to be getting rid of whatever ones he can find. Maybe he'll Force a Will it. I don't know. He gives it the thumbs up.
Good to go.
And Eric Rill attacks with everything. This is a fun play because Brandon Dai has to block the Colossus with his Tarmogoyf. He has no other options, so that means that there's going to be 9 points of damage coming from the other creatures.
Yeah, you're just getting free damage, and Dai is kind of shrugging his shoulders, looking at his hand, and he's saying, yeah, gotta get in front of the old Blightsteel. I don't have a choice. Yeah, Blightsteel's gonna take that down. Actually, we should put some minus counters on that Tarmogoyf Dai because of Infect. But down goes Tarmogoyf. And as you mentioned, Dai's gonna take a bunch of damage. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 damage from the Welders, the Metalworkers, and that Lodestone Golem. And I don't think he's gonna have enough to be able to kill Rill here. You see he's got a handful of counter magic. He's got Spell Pierce, some other things, but it's not going to be enough. And Eric Rill, the Star City Games Cincinnati Legacy champion, is off to a beautiful start this weekend, defeating Brandon Dai, mud defeating Rug Delver 2-0 in pretty decisive fashion there.
Yeah, that was very decisive.
Game 1, Chalice of the Void, this game's over. Game 2, took him a little while to start getting to his big mana, but once he did with the Metalworkers, bang, Blightsteel Colossus, not Darksteel Colossus. Pfft, that card's never going to see play again.
Yeah.
Forget Darksteel Colossus. Give me Blightsteel Colossus. Get you dead. So Eric Rill, 3-0.
Yeah, good for him. And, one of the things about that Blightsteel Colossus, why those vintage players don't like it, there were a ton of really interesting choices that players would make about whether they wanted Darksteel Colossus or whether they wanted this or that in various different decks. Blightsteel Colossus basically changed all of those questions into just one answer.
Yep.
This is the only one. This is what you get. What else are you going to get?